The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, and welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. Today I'm going to talk to you about adding borates to your pool. I know I've talked about this before in previous podcasts. What brought this conversation on is basically I had two calls today from two different members of my group, and we talked quite a bit about borates on the phone conversations, and I want to bring some of this information to you here in this podcast. Leslie's Pool Supplies is a proud partner of the Pool Guy Podcast Show. Leslie's Pool Supplies has been do-it-yourselfers and pool trade professionals' trusted partner since 1963, providing quality products and services to make pool care easy and solutions and expertise to do it right. So the first call I got, the person was just catching me at the end of the call, and he said, "Hey, so one of the other pool guys down here in Florida mentioned that there's this great product you can add to the pool, and it really helps with algae, and it just really turned my route around for me. And it's a boric acid." And he asked me, is this product any good? And basically, it's just one way to add borates to the pool with boric acid. You can add it also with the borax product, or you can get a manufactured product, a pre-mixed manufactured product like the BioGuard Optimizer. These are all the same way of actually adding borates to your pool, or not the same way, different ways of adding borates to your pool, but the end result is that you have a borate level of 30 to 50 parts per million. And then the second call was about adding borates to a above ground pool, and my suggestion to him was to use the 20 mule team borax at the grocery store. You find that in the laundry aisle next to the detergents because it has a high pH, and the vinyl liner pool, the above ground pool, had a low pH anyway to begin with, and so it would be perfect just to add that. You would raise the pH along with adding the borate to the water. Now, why is that level 30 to 50 parts per million the ideal mark? I'm not exactly sure if having more than 50 parts per million in the pool is going to add any benefits to it, or if it's hazardous above 50 parts per million. It's always been about 30 to 50 parts per million. I know BioGuard recommends 35 parts per million, so they're kind of taking the low end of it. I've had my pool at 40 parts per million. I ran my pool at the beginning of the season at 28 parts per million, a little bit below 30 parts per million. I didn't notice a big difference between 28 parts per million and 40 parts per million, to tell you the truth. So I don't think you need to overdo it by having it at 50 parts per million. If you have it at 30 parts per million, you're going to get a lot of the good benefits of having borates in the water. And then you may ask, what are those benefits of having the borates in the water? If you're new to borates, basically, it's a natural algistat, which means it's not an EPA-registered algicide, so it doesn't actually kill algae in the pool per se as an algicide that you would purchase over the counter at your pool store or online. However, something in the borate keeps algae from actually forming in the water, and that's why it's called an algistat. It stops the algae from forming. So in some respect, it'll keep your pool algae free because the algae can't form in the pool. It also adds a really nice sparkle to the water. You'll notice a sparkle within 20 minutes of adding the product to your skimmer, and it'll make the water sparkle when the sun hits it, and it's a pretty major difference right away when you add the borate to the pool. Other great benefits of borates is that it is a pH buffer. So you have alkalinity, which is a natural buffer of the pH already in the water, the alkaline of the water. And basically, if your alkalinity is at 150 or 160, and you add muriatic acid to your pool to lower your pH down from 8.0, you want to get it down to 7.6. So let's say, since the alkalinity is so high, you add that quart of acid to your pool, you're going to notice that the pH may have dropped a little bit, but it'll bounce right back up pretty quickly because the alkalinity is buffering the pH. If your alkalinity is like 60 or 50 in the pool, and you add that same quart of acid, the pH is going to drop from 8.0 to maybe 7.0 because there's nothing buffering the acid you're adding to the pool. So the borates is a secondary buffer of pH, and so that's why before you add the borate product to your pool, whether you're adding the 20 mule team borax or boric acid or premix manufactured, and I'll go over kind of which one you probably should choose in your situation also. Before you add the product, you want to balance your pool as closely as possible to have your alkalinity between 80 and 120. And it's a good idea to have your pH in range. Again, this will be dependent on the product you're using. I think the alkalinity is more important at this point. The pH could be in different ranges depending on what you're adding to the pool. So for example, if you're adding the reason why you want to make these adjustments, I'll back up a little bit, is because once you add the borate to the pool, since it is a secondary pH buffer, it's harder to move the alkalinity and pH one way or the other in large numbers. So if you start and the pH is like 8.4 and you add the borates to the pool, it's going to be harder for you to bring that down to 7.6 at that point because you have a secondary buffer with the borates in the water. So depending on what product you're going to use is where you want the pH to start. If you're going to be using the 20T mule borax, which a lot of people like because it's very affordable. I just found out that in Texas it's like $2.50 a box. Here in California it's closer to $5 for a box of it. So, it's a pretty affordable way to add it to your pool, and I think it's one of those things that people look for is the way that's the easiest and the most affordable, and I think the 20T mule borax fits that category in a lot of ways. So in this case, you want to have your pH a little bit on the low side, because when you add the 20T mule borax to the water, it's going to raise the pH up significantly. If you want to know exactly how much it'll raise it up, go to the poolcalculator.com app. You can put it on your phone or use it on the web, and there's actually a category in there for borate, which is really nice to have that category. I don't know if any other apps have that currently, but I know this one does, and so I use it all the time when I calculate how much borate to add to the pool. Now, if you're using a premix manufactured product like BioGuard Optimizer, it's about 1.5 pounds per 1,000 gallons of water. So if you have a 15,000 gallon pool, a 20-pound bucket will be enough of that product to bring it to 35 parts per million, and that's the number that they recommend to have it at, and so that's their calculations are based on that. And so it's basically more of a boric acid product in those manufactured products because the pH is about 4.7 or 5, so they're a lot lower in pH. If you use straight boric acid, the pH is in the 4s also, so it'll cause the pH to dip slightly in a lot of pools, depending on the size, of course. If you have a smaller pool, the more boric acid you add to the pool, the lower the pH will drop. But it's not something that is going to be a problem. I think BioGuard recommends not adding more than 8 or 10 pounds per treatment. So you would add, 8 or 10 pounds in the skimmer, and then you would have to wait the next day to add the other 10 pounds. So you don't want to add the whole 20 pounds at one time, because I think the pH would drop a little bit lower in that case with 20 pounds of boric acid going into the pool. And the same thing with the boric acid. Since the optimizer is a pre-blended and has a lower pH, boric acid also has a low pH, so you don't want to add 20 pounds of boric acid to the pool in one shot. So break that up into 2 or 3 different applications of the product. But once you add it to the pool, you're going to see instant results with having the borates in the pool water. So which products are better? It just depends on what you're comfortable with. Some like the boric acid if you can find it. Some areas it's harder to find than others. Ironically, here in California, they actually mine borates out in the desert here on the way up to Lake Tahoe in the middle of the desert before you get to Mount Whitney. I think that's the mountain I'm thinking of. There's a huge area of like white sand or white desert, and that's where they mine the borax. So it's readily available here in California. I don't know why the price is so high for the 20 multeam borax, but they actually mine it here in California, which is pretty interesting. So, depending on what you're comfortable with using, I like the pre-measured manufactured products myself. So I order the BioGuard Optimizer, and then I pass the cost on to my customers. I let the customer know that I'm adding this water purifier / clarifier to your pool. It's going to make the water much more sparkling, and it's going to keep the water in balance for you and make your water look blue all season long. I don't really go into a lot of details about it being a pH buffer or an algistat, although if the customer does have problems with algae, I'll mention the fact that this will also prevent the algae from coming back in their pool, and that's kind of a bonus way of selling it. But I don't really give them a lot of details about it. But I really think it's a great enhancer to use in your pool. It's a great enhancer to use if you have a pool route. and the suppliers don't carry this in most cases. I don't think Pool Corp nor Leslie's or maybe even the smaller suppliers actually stock this product. Again, I mentioned before in a previous podcast, it's like if you owned an auto repair shop and you had an oil that would last 50,000 miles in between oil changes, you probably wouldn't want to put that in the front of the store on a banner because then you won't see your customers for a year or two. So definitely that's not a good thing for the actual stores, the actual distributors or stores themselves. However, there's other reasons to go into the pool store besides buying chlorine and shock and algicide, but I don't think a lot of them see that. I think you're not going to lose too much. I mean, you're going to definitely lose on the algicides and probably some shock products, but you get better customer relations because the pools look a lot better. Customers are going to still need to buy acid and, of course, chlorine, because even with the borates in the water, you're going to still need to add chlorine to the pool, and they're going to have to buy new pumps and motors and things like that. So yes, you may lose some sales on the algicide end of it, but you're going to gain customers because their pools are going to look so great. I still use phosphates and enzymes in some of these pools with borates. I know it's probably overkill. I really like the enzyme products myself, and so I'll use a weekly enzyme in a lot of these pools with the borates just because I've had such good success with the enzymes that I really like how the pool looks and how the chlorine is a lot more effective, especially the pools that get a lot of heavy use. I have a couple of pools that have dogs swimming, I can't say that word, swimming in the pool. So the enzymes are a definite must for the pools with the dogs swimming in it and with heavy use. So the borates won't do anything as far as the oils that get into the pool. However, the benefits definitely are there, built into the product. Now, I was also asked, how often do you have to re-add the product to the pool? And the way I sell it to the customer is it's a one-time thing that I'm going to add to your pool this season. The next season, I may have to add just a small maintenance dose of it, but certainly I won't need to add the whole treatment again in our area of California. Now, of course, in Florida, where you get, 80 inches of rain or whatever, it may dilute it so much that you will have to. But in my pool, last year, mine was at 40 parts per million, and we had about 16 inches of rain in my area, and so it was at 28 parts per million at the beginning of the season. So I did lose some of the product from dilution with the rainwater, but not a whole lot of the product. So I just added 4 more pounds in my pool, and I brought it back up pretty easily. It's not a big issue. So definitely the maintenance dose is something you want to mention. But basically, the best way to sell it to somebody is that it's a one-time deal. Unlike the other things that you may put in a pool that you have to reapply all the time, the borates don't evaporate out of there. It's kind of like cyanuric acid. Like once you add it, it stays in the pool. Or like salt. The only way you're going to remove these 2 other products is with splash out, backwashing, or it could be diluted with a lot of rainwater depending on your area. But certainly you're not going to have to add 20 more pounds of it the next season if you just added 20 pounds this season. So if you're using a Pool RX on your route and you decide to do the borates, or if you're using a Pool RX in your home, or if you're using maybe a weekly Polyquat 60 algicide in your home, or you may be old school and you're using 2 ounces of yellow trine, the sodium bromide product, every week in your pool. Once you add the borates to your water to bring it to 30 to 50 parts per million, you will not need any of those products anymore. So it does kind of conflict with other enhancers out there. Like I mentioned, the only ones I still use on a regular basis with the borates is the phosphate and enzyme on some of the pools that get heavy use or have had really bad algae issues in the past. I'll still continue that regimen because I'm just used to doing that. But you won't need any of the other enhancers in your pool because the borates are highly effective in the water. And it does really work like a water purifier, clarifier, just by the results of it when you start using it. So I definitely would recommend using it. It's pretty cost effective, especially since the customer is the one who's going to absorb the cost of the product. Just like if you were to sell them a Pool RX, you're going to pay for that. And at roughly the same price range, depending on the gallons of water, depending on the product you use, of course, in there. Again, you can get the pre-manufactured product. I don't have any problem with purchasing it because the customer is going to pay for it anyway. And it does look a little better leaving a bucket of, the BioGuard optimized empty bucket there at their property so they can see that you put the product in. If you're using boric acid, may have like a picture of a roach with an X through it because they use boric acid in pest control, basically because the boric acid breaks down the shell of the roach. Insects, I guess, because they have that shell, the boric acid eats through it and will destroy it. Mammals, humans are not affected by the boric acid in the same way. So it's perfectly safe in that regard. It would take a lot of you drinking the pool with borates in them, or an animal like a dog. I had a dog for years that drank out of my pool, and the salt didn't bother her, nor did the borates in the water. She did die when she was 12 of natural causes. She had a problem with her back. So nothing in the pool actually damaged her. It was funny, I would put a bowl of water out there for her, and she would still drink out of the pool. I don't know if she liked the saltiness of the saltwater pool or what, but she just wouldn't drink out of a bowl, but that's another story. So it's perfectly safe to add the borates to your pool. If you go to the Trouble Free Pool forum, a lot of the people that post there are really big on borates, and I think I know why, because they're highly effective. I'm big on them because I know they work, and I use them on the pools on my route. I use them in my own personal pool. I use it in an above-ground fiberglass spa on my route, a few of them, and definitely you'll notice a difference with all these great benefits. Again, natural algistat, algae won't form. pH buffer, this means that the pH is not going to go really high in the pool really rapidly or really low in the pool. And in my case, I mentioned before that it's a saltwater pool, and if I were to add acid to my pool on a Monday and bring it down from 8.2 to 7.6, by Friday or Saturday, it's about 7.8. Without the borates in the water, it would be 8.2 again by like Wednesday or Thursday, because that salt generator just raises that pH up dramatically. I also have a spa spillway that aerates the pool, and that definitely raises the pH up also. So I have two things working against it. But the borates definitely keep the pH very stable. I noticed right away when I added the borates to my pool that I started using a lot less muriatic acid. I guess this is another downside to distributors carrying it, because they probably will actually sell less muriatic acid, less dry acid. But again, you can buy this product online. You can buy it in the boric acid form. You can buy it in the 20-mule team borax form. So it's not like if they don't carry it, pool guys and homeowners can't get it anywhere. So I'm not exactly sure why they don't jump on board and just carry BioGuard Optimizer, make their money on it, because they're going to lose the sale anyway to someone else. And if you can buy it online or from another supplier, they actually lose out, and they're gonna have the customer not shop there because they found the product somewhere else, and they may start buying their products from another online store in that case. So I know I'm kind of going off on a little rabbit trail soapbox kind of talk here, but to me it's illogical for pool stores, distributors not to carry the borate product, because it's readily available somewhere else, and people are going to buy it somewhere else. So if you're the auto mechanic that doesn't have the 50,000 mile oil change available, by the way, that doesn't exist, I don't think, but if you don't have that available to your customer, they're going to find it somewhere else, or they're going to buy that oil online and put it in their car themselves. So you're going to lose the sale anyway. But I digress, and I'm just here to tell you the benefits of the product. So with those two calls I got today, I explained pretty well to them why I like using the product. They know that I'm a big proponent of it. They've listened to my other podcasts on it. They've seen my videos on it. And I can tell you from the guys in the group that do use the borates in the pool, to 30 to 50 parts per million, they definitely notice a huge difference on their pool route as far as chemical use, acid use. The pH stays very stable. And of course, not using a lot of algicides, because the pools just don't get algae. I've mentioned before, I've tested my pool by not putting chlorine. I actually turned my salt system off for 2 weeks, and the first week everything looked great. The chlorine zeroed out, of course, after the first week. Second week it went through just about the whole week, and then near the end of the week it started getting cloudy, and then one day I woke up, it was pretty murky looking, and so I decided, okay, now it's time to actually put chlorine back in the pool. This was when the borates were at 30 parts per million roughly, and it really kept the pool from getting algae. It was really a good test, a good visual test for myself, and I use my pool a lot for these kind of testing. I don't tell my wife that, but This is one of the things that I do since I have a pool back there. I do a lot of testing on it. And it's just one of those things that you can actually try yourself if you are willing to do it, see how long you can go without chlorine in your pool. Of course, don't use the pool because it's not safe to swim in there. But you can see how the borates really will keep the pool from getting algae in there, even when there's no chlorine in the water. And if you're looking for a pre-mixed product, you can find a link to the BioGuard Optimizer on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. If you just scroll over to the top to pool chemicals, you'll see the optimizer there. Again, you can use boric acid or 20-multene borax to do the same thing. I personally just like to pre-measure stuff because of the optics of it for my customers. But if you're doing it in your own house, or if you're just doing it out of a bag and you're not going to leave anything for the customer to see what they purchase, definitely go with the boric acid or the 20-multene borax. One, again, is really high in pH, which is the 20-multene borax, and one is really low in pH, or is very acidic, which is the boric acid. So keep that in mind when you pick those products. And if you do pool service and you're looking to enhance your business, or if you're starting out, definitely check out my coaching program at poolguycoaching.com. A lot of great benefits there, including the ability to call me and text me in real time, like those 2 members did today. And you can also get discounts on your general liability insurance, among other things. And you can learn more about that at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Leslie's Pool Supplies has been do-it-yourselfers and pool trade professionals' trusted partner since 1963, providing quality products and services to make pool care easy and solutions and expertise to do it right.